Anatomy and Physiology live with your professor, Dr. Sean Clavel. This is the beginning of week 5, or we're in the midst of week 5 here. So we've passed the quarter way mark of the semester, and now we are digging deep into really some of the more anatomy and physiology specific components. We went over some basic chemistry and some basic cell biology in the previous chapters, and now we take this opportunity in this week to get a look at histology. And I want to take this time to give you guys a particular review related to chapter 4, histology, because I want to give you a list in this next couple of minutes here in this time, to give you a list of the different types of tissues. So this will be just a pretty exhaustive list of the different types of tissues you'll be asked to identify. So in this section here, you're going to have a practical. So in this, you'll have a practical, you'll have pictures of tissue slides, and you'll be asked to identify those different types of tissue slides. So this will be a big component here related to the exam associated with this chapters 4 and 5. So what I wanted to do is, again, like I said, make a list of some of these tissue slides that you'll be familiar with, or you should be familiar with. So again, if we put in here, let's start with first epithelial tissue. And so I'm going to make this a little bit. And the first one is simple, right? So simple squamous epithelium, you should be familiar with. That's the first one. Let me make a list here. Simple squamous epithelium. The second one, simple cuboidal epithelium. Simple columnar epithelium. So these are the 3 types of simple epithelium you should be familiar with. And simple / pseudostratified. So for either one of those, I might give you the, because they look so similar, I'd give you credit if you said either one for that. So, and then the next one here is stratified squamous epithelium. So again, these are the types of tissues that you should be familiar with as it relates to the epithelium, right? So let me see if I got some slides here. So again, first is our example of simple squamous epithelium. So simple squamous epithelium, this example here, you can see on the outside lining of the kidney tubule, you'll see simple squamous epithelium. Simple cuboidal epithelium, so you can see here simple cuboidal epithelium that makes up the tubes or tubules there. So let me zoom in one more time and show you the other slide here. This is simple cuboidal epithelium. and simple columnar epithelium. So simple columnar epithelium, which looks very similar to pseudostratified columnar epithelium. So as you can see here, they both look fairly similar. So I'd take both of those in terms of the answer there. So if you call it pseudostratified or simple, either one of those are probably acceptable in either of those answers there. Okay, and so you got that simple squamous epithelium, simple cuboidal epithelium, simple or pseudostratified columnar epithelium. Again, looks very similar, and then stratified squamous epithelium. These are the four types of epithelium you'll be asked to identify on a particular slide. The next one here, connective tissue. So as it relates to connective tissue, let's start from connective tissue proper. So connective tissue proper, the whole list of connective tissue is pretty exhaustive. So let's see if I can make it into a couple of columns here. But first we have loose connective tissue, which includes areolar, adipose, and reticular. So there's areolar, adipose, and reticular tissue. Then there's dense, regular connective tissue, or CT abbreviated for short. There's dense, irregular connective tissue. And then let's go to the more dense types of tissues, including cartilage. So there's three types of cartilage: hyaline cartilage, fibro cartilage, and finally elastic cartilage. Next is bone. So bone is another group here. And then we go to blood and lymph, I think. Blood and lymph. So let's see here. Areolar connective tissue. Let's take a look here at this whole list. So yeah, that's the list there, right? So whether it is areolar tissue that looks here, this is areolar connective tissue. If we zoom in a little bit more, you can see kind of all of those fibers and fibroblasts associated with that. There's another zoom in there. This again, areolar connective tissue. Adipose connective tissue, that's ultimately an empty lipid droplet with a nucleus on the outside. Reticular tissue, dense regular, so dense regular has the collagen fibers in a parallel pattern. Dense irregular, where the collagen just runs in a dispersed pattern. And then the three types of cartilage. So hyaline cartilage, which is nice and glossy. It's got a much glossy appearance. It has the look like that. There's fibrocartilage and elastic cartilage, right? Elastic cartilage. Finally, bone. Bone should be fairly common. Hopefully, it looks very unique and very easily identifiable. So, bone is a hopefully easily identifiable feature there. And blood. I don't have any pictures of lymph per se, but there is blood for you there. So again, we've got connective tissue, areolar, adipose, reticular, dense regular, and irregular connective tissue, hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, elastic cartilage. As you can see, connective tissue is the most exhaustive list. Bone, blood, and lymph are also included in that list as well. The next muscle tissue. So there's three types of muscle tissue: skeletal muscle. That's the muscle tissue that's associated with movement. There is cardiac muscle tissue, and okay, uh, and smooth muscle tissue. So these are the three types of muscle tissue that you should be familiar with. Let me hop here and show you quickly what I'm mentioning here. Each of them has their own different attributes as well. So when we take a look at these different types of muscle tissue, you'll see that like skeletal muscle, which is voluntary, meaning that it is responsible for your volitional movements. Cardiac muscle and smooth muscle, which is involuntary, excuse me, and is responsible, contracts while you're not thinking. Let's take a look specifically a little bit more at each of these tissues here. So there's skeletal muscle. You can see that it's like a tube, so it's got striations to it, which are the dark and light alternating bands. It's multinucleated, and so these are some of the features associated with skeletal muscle tissue. Cardiac muscle tissue, a little bit more branched of a shape. So you can see at the top of the screen here that it has got a more branched shape, and there contains intercalated discs. And then smooth muscle tissue. You can see smooth muscle tissue here in the slide. It's a little bit more of an oblong shape. One of the features associated with smooth muscle tissue is the twisted or kinked type of nuclei that is associated with it as well. Right. And so being able to identify the skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle tissue. And then the nervous tissue really should be just one main thing here, is the parts of a neuron. So being able to identify the soma, also referred to as the cell body, the dendrites, and the axon. So knowing the different parts of it, and not necessarily in a actual tissue slide here, but being able to identify it in a diagram of a neuron. So if I pull up a picture here, you'll see here that there is the neuron, and so you should be able to identify. Let me go back this way. You should be able to identify the soma or the cell body, the axon, and the dendrite. So again, the parts of a neuron. So again, we'll take a look here at epithelial tissue, simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simpler pseudostratified columnar epithelium, and stratified squamous epithelium will be key to identify whether it is connective tissue in this long exhaustive list from areolar, adipose, reticular, dense regular, dense irregular, hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage, elastic cartilage, bone, blood, and lymph, skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, or smooth muscle, and then finally, not that you should be able to identify what nervous tissue looks like, but really the only identifiable attributes of this nervous tissue I'd want you to remember too is the parts of a neuron. The parts of a neuron, the very basic parts of a neuron, are going to be a key here. But yeah, that's the time I wanted to spend here going over the pictures component. So you'll see these pictures in your slides. They're in the website. Let me do that. I'll show you here. If you go through your Canvas, there's two websites that will be helpful in terms of providing resources for you guys here to identify these tissues. So I'll go through my online course 007 here, give it a student view. We'll go to modules here. Click on modules. Scroll down to the list of textbook and additional resources. You can see here there's two websites. So histologyguide.org, which is going to give you a good review into it's a virtual microscope. So histology guide is the virtual microscope. And digital histology, I'll just type in digital histology, missed it there. Digital histology provides more of like a click through. So you can see here, there's the different types of tissues. Again, this is digital histology. You can go to epithelial tissue. It shows as the lining and covering. And so I did, excuse me, let me get back here. Simple epithelium. And as you can see here, slides from the that you've seen from your lectures and you'll see in the exams as well. Simple squamous epithelium is identified. Simple cuboidal epithelium is identified there. So go ahead to the next slide. And then you would be asked to identify the simple squamous epithelium there. Same thing here, simple squamous epithelium. So you'll be asked to identify that there. And that's digital histology, a good resource there for you guys to use. The next one is Histology Guide. And so with Histology Guide, what you'll see is that this is a digital microscope. So what's going to happen is you can see that there's examples of simple squamous epithelium in the tissue slides here. So if I click on the first one, this is the same structures, right? This is the kidney tubules. So we can probably find very similar structures here associated with the epithelium that we've been mentioning here. So let's see here. This is... Actually, and it does have some drop downs too, so we can go to the kidney. Here's the kidney. So you can see here, like, we'll make this a little bit of that. The renal corpuscle, this bundled structure here, is that we're zoomed in on is lined on the outside by a simple squamous epithelium there. On the other portion, you've got the cuboidal epithelium, but there you can identify these structures pretty well. Right there. So that's about it for me here. I'm going to start to wrap up, but I encourage you guys to use these websites: Digital Histology, histologyguide.org, as the resources to help you study through the histology of the human body here. So there's only four major types of tissues: the epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. But there's a lot of subcategories in there, so I encourage you guys to take a look at that. Until then, I'll see you guys next week, where we'll discuss a little bit more of the topics at hand. We'll get into the integumentary system, but until then, take care and wish you well. I'll look forward to seeing your guys' responses through the rest of the weekend, through